on Briar versus Jeremy Stowe on Viserai. So you can probably you can hear the phone right now. It goes ring, 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 ring. Rosetta Thorn. Yep, that's likely what's going to happen here, my friends. But again, watch Brodie. Brodie is unflappable. He is somebody who is unfazed, untilted, just steadfast in how he plays. If Brodie falls behind, you're not going to see any types of those, those emotions that might bleed through the mask and through the glasses and such. Again, he's somebody who has been very, very adept at every single hero that he's touched, he has succeeded with. And seeing him at 4-0 is hardly a surprise.
Yeah, Jeremy Stowe as well. We've seen on camera before, I do believe, and a player that in his own right, sitting at 4-0, saying, you know what, I'm going to sweep my pod, and then I'm going to crush this next round. And look at that. He's just solid drawing into Revel and Runeblood as he draws up and begins the game.
Now, I got to say, when it comes to the meta, everybody's like, oh, is it Briar? Is it Oldham or whatever? I'm talking about the meta of where the hell you place your hero. Look at Jeremy just doing that little Texas two-step to the left, dropping that Viserai on the left-hand flank. What's that about?
You know, that sometimes you just got to do it. Sometimes that's just where it belongs. He also stacks the rune chants up in the back so that you can represent the one rune chant plus the rune chant that's actually like created or that you're going to be creating, which I personally do as well. I don't know about you. But it's interesting to look at the equipment here, as both players, being Rune Blades, are going to share a lot of these equipment pieces. But Brodie, of course, playing the Snapdragon Scalers, which lends me to believe that he's leaning more towards the aggressive, like, red line side of things, rather than a combo-oriented creepers build, if you will.
Yeah, so when it comes down to it, honestly, like he's stacking your Runeblades and stuff like that, I don't do that mainly because as a person of class and culture, I don't play Runeblade. So I
understand.
Yeah, so I typically don't have to, have these kinds of inner monologues about like, hey, look how cool I am stacking my rune chants this way. Stephen Cookus, hey, trade us your crack bubbles.
That's right. Yeah, I'll trade up.
All right,
wow.
Starting it off, baby.
What a way to start off, too, coming in from Mordred Tide to the old Swarming Gloomveil, representing 4 with the go again.
That should generate 2 auras, so you're getting the +4 and the go again, which is great. Mordred Tide is a wicked starter to any turn.
Yeah, talk about a turn 0 play, and this is going to most likely be followed up with the Revel and Runeblood, which is going to make, I think the number is like 25 rune chants. Maybe 28. It's going to make a lot of rune chants, okay?
Worth noting as well, Brodie not packing any AB. Brodie's saying, hey, we're gonna swing for the fences, and I'm going to get there first.
So there's it's interesting because there's this accepted theory that if you're going second on Runeblade, that you swap the gloves for,
Vexing?
The Vexing Quill Hand, right? And so your job on turn 0 is to prevent something like a huge, big arcane swing turn so that you're not playing from the back foot. Here, deciding instead to go with Grasp of the Arknight, and we're going to see if that pick pays off or if he's going to suffer just a huge, massive amount of arcane damage, which is a very real possibility.
Revelin Runeblood is going to go ahead and add not just 4, but 2 on top. It's going to add 6 to that pile, possibly. Maybe it was even more. Who knows? But we got 9 rune chants plus the Rosetta Thorn. That Rosetta Thorn is coming in hot and heavy as well.
And this is the worst case scenario when you are not playing any Arcane Barrier, is not having that ability to stop any of that damage means you are playing from a huge back foot.
And again, Brodie has been here and, starting the game essentially at an 11-point deficit. It's a very intimidating mountain to climb.
It
and
is.
A lot of unseasoned players would probably look at this and get deflated. They might change their standpoint. They might actually turtle up in this case to try to, mitigate more damage. But I think in this case, Brodie is just, been there, done that. Don't worry about it. I've read the brochure. So we're just going to block out here, finish the turn off the way it's supposed to be, draw up, and now so Jeremy not opting to arsenal a card, just going for pure damage, maximize as much damage as you can push through.
Yeah, because he wanted to push those rune chants because of Revel there, so that he can push across that Rosetta Thorn. Had to pitch that last card, which I think was a Mauvrian Skies, in order to attack with that Rosetta. But drawing up and passing on over to Brodie, who draws up as well. And this is where you have to, from Brodie's perspective, put together your own large turn, because as the turn 1 player, your opponent isn't going to draw up as you just did, and this is where you can capitalize on your own big turn.
Brodie's turn now. Just sort of rifling through those cards, and again, a lot of it is, you know, there's the standard blueprint for something like Briar. Okay, non-attack, attack with a go again, go with Rosetta. That's the basic way to do this. However, sometimes your hand gets all mucked up with too many non-attacks, too many attacks that don't have go again. As I see in his hand, is that an E-Strike I thought he flashed? I see a
Yes.
Weave Earth, E-Strike, Snatch. And
Tome of Harvest blue, right? Tome of Harvest. So that could definitely do some interesting things. I don't think this game is one where you take the stance of, well, let's see if I have this Tome of Harvest later and pitch it for second cycle. I don't think you can play that game. This is going to be going fast. And I think Brodie, based on this list that he's presented, he is going all gas, no brakes, is very red heavy. He needs to push a ton of damage and just figure out the best way to do so. Yeah, he's going to tuck the Tome of Harvest there, and let's see, the mode he chooses most likely as 5 go again.
You gotta you've got to start hitting back, right? And this is not a very scary snatch, but if you're going to snap it, now's the time. Yep, so we like that. He's going to pick up a card here. There is a go again option. He's going to draw Embodiment of Earth created, drawing another Earth card.
Oh, no, I think he drew a Weave, or he had a Weave Earth perhaps, and drew into another Earth card, so that actually may be just the turn. Could not really push a ton of damage. He's going to break the chain, it looks like. I don't think he's played a non-attack, so playing a non-attack here would allow him for a Rosetta, but perhaps just choosing to generate off the grass, but Rune Chant, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Again, you know, there's no reason to end the turn with 2 cards. So, you know, swinging Rosetta, taking a Rune Chant, at least it's 3. The card off the top, it wasn't ideal, unfortunately. Like, maybe you're hoping for something fat, like a, you know, even Command and Conquer's not all that effective over here because there's no arsenal for Viserai. Jeremy's not really packing much heat, but to Brodie's, at least to Brodie's benefit, Jeremy's got a 4-card hand, and he's equalized the life totals, and Brodie now has a 5-card hand that he can work with.
Yeah, really this is a numbers game. This is a race, and both players are just looking for that damage that they can push across. And if you're from the perspective of Jeremy, you're thinking, okay, my opponent doesn't actually have any way to stop Arcane. Can I push just insane amounts of Rune Chant damage off of things like Revels? If I can, how do I go about doing that as effectively and quickly as possible? And one way is to go tutor it out via the Become the Arc Knight, and that's what we see.
Yeah, fetching that Revel in Rune Blood. Again, that card has some specific criteria to it. You know, if you're not careful, you might just generate a whole bunch of Rune Chants, and then they're gone.
That is correct, and it's something that we saw in turn 0 there. Of course, you do need to swing with it, swing those Rune Chants in, but obviously that's what you want to do anyway, especially like from the general construction of a Viserai deck right now. You're not looking to play more of like a slow, grindy OTK matchup like you may have way back in crew days. It's all just pushing damage. That's the point.
That is a Vexing Malice, so it's going to come in, I believe that's red. It's coming in for 3, but it's also packing a 2 points of Arcane Chaser on this bad boy.
Wow, the red being played is an interesting tech choice, and that hints that this is really leaning into the arcane damage, because normally we see the blues played, and that's why you see it, you know, in there in pitch. But playing the red here as well indicates that this is really all about pushing a ton of arcane damage, and this may be a tough hill to climb if that's the point of the deck. And Brodie doesn't have Arcane Barrier, to speak of.
Yeah, you're basically just leaving the door open for, you know, the Arcane to walk in, and the 3 is, you can answer that. But again, this is a deck that opts to pack a lot of Tales of Aria cards in it, which means that there's a lot of 2 blocks, a lot of non-attacks that don't block for much. So this 3 can leak through. But the question here is, does Brodie have a clean way to utilize all 5 cards to push the damage back? Because keep in mind, Brodie, Brodie busted the Snapdragons when perhaps he may have not been comfortable doing. Took a little gamble there, but the added pressure did equalize the game and allowed him to maintain an arsenal. So really, that was a decent use. But Snapdragon Scalers that early in a game, typically you're snapping those to really secure a victory or to push the tempo, maintain tempo, and then really put your opponent in an uncomfortable spot.
Now, if you think this turn is over, there's another thing coming because he floated 2 resources because here the play, and this is pretty telegraphed, but that's okay because it's a really powerful play, was to use Spellbound Creepers to play Revel in Runeblood at instant speed, generate a ton of rune chance, and then use the last resource off of the Go Again trigger at instant speed of Revel in Runeblood to push 2, 2, and 6 arcane from the rune chance. So again, mass amounts of arcane damage that just can't be dealt with.
You just got to basically smile and take it. That's exactly what Brodie's doing here, down to 18 in this case. With a 5-card hand, this could get nasty. You'd think that if any of that was useless, he would send it right at this Rosetta. I do see a Sigil of Suffering in there.
Yeah.
I see a Scar for a Scar, a Coax of Commotion, and a Lightning Surge. The Sigil. And, all right, so it looks like this, I mean, the Sigil's probably, you know, the odd card out here, and might as well just go ahead and add a little insult to injury on this one, tickle 1 point away.
A little bit of unintentional offense, just being able to poke a little bit of damage on there.
That wasn't even from the hat, or was it?
No, it might be in
it
the
might
hat.
be in the hat.
It's one of my favorite terms, the old unintentional offense.
You know what? And when we were talking about cards where we can use this, we said Reckless Swing.
Steelblade Shunt.
We didn't even think of this one.
Well, you know what? There it is. Sigil of Suffering coming across with the unintentional offense.
Trifecta secured. All right,
Nailed it.
Brodie. Brodie's locked and loaded here. He's just got to pull the trigger on this card, thinking about it. Again, 4 cards. You got to piece these together. And we're going to open with Scar for Scar. He's in the right lifespan total to make this happen. 4 Go Again.
Is going to be able to push damage with the Go Again. And this is kind of what the Briar deck, the red line Briar deck wants to do, is push 4 Go Again, a big attack. And look, this is a Coax that is receiving the buff from Nimblism to push to 7. And most likely going to choose a good variety of modes. This is something that you usually want to consider snapping on if your opponent chooses not to block. But using the snap early to try and push a little extra damage means we don't have access to it here.
What are you giving your opponent here? A Quicken token against a Guardian is completely useless for them, but anything I think that you're giving your opponent here is probably detrimental. You're not giving them a card. You're not a life is essentially useless at this juncture, I feel.
Yeah, you could probably just do this for vanilla damage and actually not choose any modes, because giving a Rune Blade a 5-card hand is incredibly dangerous, especially when it's a Viserai who wants to build Rune Chance. Letting them draw 1 deeper to that last copy of Revel in Runeblood, if they don't have it in hand already, is hugely dangerous, right?
So I think what Brodie might be thinking about here is that if he does create a Quicken token, is that Quicken token something that is going to go to waste for my opponent? Do all of their cards already have a Go Again that this Quicken token will essentially fizzle into nothingness? And will that change his game plan for the next turn? It looks like Brodie here, you see him doing some calculations.
So the point of the Viserai deck and the way that it's generally constructed is that you play a non-attack that gives Go Again, and then you play the card. And so technically giving a Quicken here is probably a fine choice, simply because their deck is already designed to create Go Again off of the Mavrian Skies and then follow that up. So it doesn't really kind of matter if they have the Go Again one way or the other. You can make use of it, so taking it for yourself is a good idea.
Well, there's in this hand, he's got some Belittles. So those are going to burn it. It's really the Vexing Malice that's going to take advantage of this Quicken token. But if that Vexing Malice was meant to be fuel for this turn, then Brodie made a very good read here and said, here you go, Merry Christmas, here's a Quicken token. Toss it directly into the fire.
Yeah, now, from Jeremy's perspective here, your goal is to just seal this game off of arcane damage as quickly as you can. So this actually may pay off for him if he has the ability to pay for other things instead of that Vexing. Because if you can give Vexing Go Again and also push free 2 damage, basically, then you're lowering that life total to much more reasonable levels every turn. And that's kind of the goal, right?
Brodie, I believe, is holding a Channel Mount Heroic with a blue Earth Pitch, if I'm not mistaken. There's the Channel Mount. I'm trying to get a read on what else. There's a Lightning Surge in there, if I'm not mistaken. Is he holding the Earth Pitch for that card is the question, because if that's the case, Brodie is lined up for some nastiness. It's going to be something along the lines of playing the channel mount, jumping in with like any kind of attack from hand, utilizing the Quicken token.
Yep.
So I think that's the that's maybe what Brodie was looking at here, is saying that if I draw into something heavy, that Quicken token is going to be much more valuable for me than it will be for Viserai.
That's exactly right, because their cards already generate that Go Again. That's what the deck's designed to do, and here Belittle's just going to burn the Go Again trigger anyway, because it has built-in Go Again.
Attaboy. There you go. Brodie Spurlock with a great call.
Now, Jeremy here, popping the Quicken token, but you don't really care too much. You're going to go search out one of those Minnowisms. I do believe he's running both red and blue. Let's take a look at the list here.
Yep, 3 red, 2 blue.
And it may be a good choice here to grab the red if he's choosing. I didn't quite see which one he grabbed, but I'm sure we'll see it here in a moment. You do have the resource already floating, but he's going to pick the blue. Maybe he wants to fuel something like a Shrill of Skull form, which can push some extra much-needed damage.
In this case, Viserai's game text not utilized, as you need to play Runeblade cards.
That's correct, yeah. It is going to be interesting to see if he follows this up with something like a Shrill, though, or if he just chooses to play that Vexing Malice, which does appear, it's hard to make out if it's red or blue, but if it is red, it's just pushing more damage, and unfortunately, depending on what you've got from your hand there, you are looking to push arcane damage on this turn because you don't want to lose Spellbound Creepers.
Is Brodie in any danger here of, if Brodie has a massive turn, if his output, let's say, is 20, do you think that Brodie's in any danger here of actually having to give up cards to block out?
At this point, probably not, especially if you know you have the channel in hand with the Earth card pitch, because if you have that, with the Earth card pitch plus, like, for example, 2 0-cost attacks, which is what your deck is sort of designed to do, draw into anyway, then you could possibly be presenting lethal on your turn, especially based on what his Arsenal card is. Is that a Lightning Surge that gets Go Again from Arsenal? And if so, that's pushing 7 damage if you can establish a channel mount.
Brodie Spurlock is, like, one of my favorite people, also because he's got that look with those like, sick glasses, man. Those specs are awesome. It reminds me of, I don't know if you're a big baseball fan, but one of my favorite players of all time was Eric Gagne. He's from my hometown of Montreal. And Eric Gagne was a relief pitcher for the Dodgers, and he wore those types of glasses, and it was awesome to see. Somebody from my hometown who was like an all-star, award-winning pitcher who then got caught for doing steroids, but whatever. I mean, look at Brodie. There's no way Brodie does steroids, first of all.
That is something that you could probably say about Brodie, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here like advocating for like, urine tests before games and stuff, but ultimately, let's just be real. I do not think that Brodie is ever going to be mistaken for Barry Bonds but like, let's be real.
You're probably correct on many points. Nevertheless, this is a very important turn to try and figure out from Brodie's perspective whether or not you actually want to commit cards to block here. Because he could also, and this is completely changing the subject, and it is what it is.
How dare you change the subject back to Flesh and Blood? What's wrong with you, man?
Why don't you throw the grasp in front of this if you really want to protect your life total? Because you could if you choose to. But you are going to be on the Tunic turn. Your Tunic takes up to 3, and so you can use that to pay for like a Rosetta at the end and have just a massive turn.
So, yeah, so that's the question here is, like, what is the consideration? There's no on-hit for Belittle. He knows that what was picked up was blue. He sees the cards in hand based off the reveal and the fetch from the Belittle. What is the concern that Brodie's worried about here?
It could be that he's just trying to count the amount of arcane sources that he has to deal with and then mitigate damage that he can actually deal with. Because he can't stop arcane damage. And he knows there's a Vexing Malice, and he also knows that Jeremy is incentivized to keep creepers around by, maybe creepers out something or just straight up trying to push as much arcane damage as possible. And so if there's any other damage that he can stop, should he? And that's the interesting question. He's
really taken some time. I don't think I've ever seen Brodie, labor over decision much as he has in this case, but I do see the line over here. And like you said, it's not about necessarily damage in general. It's about what happens if he takes the unblockable arcane. So maybe mitigating physical is the right call here if he does suspect that maybe this game, it doesn't go past 2 more turns. So let's just maximize the use of the grasp.
Well, I will say this. Because Brodie is a local to me, I did watch him play once, and he belabored the decision on blocking with a blue non-attack or another blue non-attack, both of which had very little bearing on the outcome of a draft game.
Right.
But he belabored the point for several minutes, just trying to think about the very edge corner cases of when he might want to pitch that second cycle and then draw into a different card. The guy thinks about all his outcomes, and that is a hallmark of a good player.
Yeah, and there I am in the same situation. I'm like, do I block with my red nimblism or my foil red nimblism? Like, it doesn't matter, but ultimately I'm just like, yeah, but this one's shiny. Do I want to show him it's shiny, or do I want to stare at it that it's shiny? So there it is. The grass does block the belittle. The second belittle comes through again. That's another yellow. Yellow belittles have sort of wheeled their way into relevance. A lot of it off the back of someone like Matt Folks, who's a very big fan of Belittle Minnowism combo, been very vocal about the sheer power level of a card like this. This is a card combo that I think has been within the sort of the sphere of discussion when it comes to bans and erratas and things like that and suspensions. But there's the red Minnowism.
Yep, he's going to creepers in beforehand, though, the red Minnowism, so that he can gain an action point here, which allows him to both swing Vexing Malice for 2 and 3 and also swing the blade for 2 and 2.
So Brodie, again, protecting life total as best as possible. This Vexing Malice red is going to come in for 6 plus 2 arcane. There's no rune chance. I lied. There's a rune chant, but it's just generated. I lied right to your mouths. I'm so sorry about that. But I'm just behind the reality here, as the rune chant is generated off the Vexing Malice.
It is going to be a lot of arcane damage represented in general. Because he's pushing with Vexing Malice, he's going to swing the blade after this, most likely. That's why we have the 1 floating. We have the 2 action points moving to 1 action point. It's just a lot of damage. But, again, it's basically begging the question, do you have a good enough hand, Brodie, to push back this much damage and then also survive the next turn if you're not presenting lethal to me? Because if not, then you need to start blocking now, like yesterday.
I think that, in this case, Brodie has to also be aware that his hand has to be good enough to not just threaten lethal, but threaten 2 or 3 cards out of the hand.
Correct. Yeah. What's your maximum range? I think range analysis.
4,000 parsecs.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's very fast. That is a short distance. I'll put it that way.
That's damn right it is.
That's what it is. It's a short distance. But what's your range of damage that you can push on a channel turn where you have an established channel? And if that question. I basically, the top that I can think of off the top of my head is you establish channel, pitching 3, and then you push 3 0-cost attacks that all snake together for go again and equal to 21, right?
And then a tunic into Rosetta. But you have to have the perfect hand, which is the blue pitch onto the channel plus the 3 natural go agains.
Yep.
Maybe one of those is a non-attack action, but that actually is less valuable than, let's say, a Ravenous Rabble or anything else, frankly. The question is, what's in Brodie's pocket over there? What is he holding in the arsenal? Is it a natural go again? Is it something like Red Lightning Surge? We have to be wary of what the hell that card is, because it might have significant implications.
Yeah, we saw in hand a Lightning Surge previous to this. He does have the Earth card to pitch. I would assume that both of those Autumn's Touches are blue. I don't believe he's running a red Autumn's Touch, but I could be wrong. Glancing at the list, it does look like he has 3 blue Autumn's Touches and no red ones. So he guaranteed has the blue, but if he has 2 Autumn's Touch in hand, then you can't rely on pushing 3 instances of 0-cost attacks that just push 21 lethal, right?
All right, so Brodie did the math. He's going down to 4 over here after taking all of that Rosetta damage, the Arcane plus the Rune Chant. This is where it's going to get nasty. Let's see what kind of tricks Brodie was hiding up his sleeve this entire time.
And it literally comes down to this, ticking up the tunic to 3, making sure you don't miss that. You have to present lethal here and get something out of the turn, because you can't allow, and there's the channel mount pitching with the, and there's a Lightning Surge from hand with the Quicken. you can't allow this turn to not represent lethal and then to just keep a 4-card hand. You can't survive that.
Keep in mind, this turn began with that Coaxum Commotion last turn that generated the Quicken token that went to waste on Jeremy. So Brodie is now, reaping the benefits of those seeds that he sowed last turn, which was that Quicken token. The Channel Mount Heroic is the bread and butter of this Briar list, and the fact that he only found it now. I say now, this is turn 3, Steven. Like, we have been here watching fireworks, but that Tunic has just hit 3 now. So for the 25 minutes that we've watched this, a lot of it was Brodie agonizing over the damage that was being presented, and Brodie also starting the entire game, starting his campaign at 29 health.
That's right. The game would certainly play out differently had you had the opportunity to stop this. But maybe that's his stance. Maybe I just don't care about racing Arcane. Maybe I just want to find a Channel Mount Heroic, push insane amounts of damage. Here we see 7 go again. We can assume the arsenal is probably something along the lines of 7 go again. And he does have, one more Autumn's Touch in hand. I believe we saw 2 of them in hand, or at least it looked like that. And that card is the unfortunate, perhaps dead card in hand. So you have played a non-attack and an attack, so you can threaten lethal technically with the 7 go again if it is from the arsenal.
Is that Tome of Harvest, though, in Arsenal?
No, if it were Tome of Harvest,
it
would be a completely dead card. There's the second Lightning Surge from a turn or 2 ago. And this one will be go again 7 as well. This coming from Arsenal Gains go again.
Okay, so lethal is being presented here.
Yeah, and this is the benefit that Jeremy has, is he has not used any of his equipment to block at all. And so he can actually try to keep a 4-card hand and chuck, like, the Aether Ironweave, the Grasp, the Crown, all in front of all of this.
Yeah, the danger here, honestly, as well, is the fact that at 4, it's for Viserai to create 4 arcane damage. It's not that difficult. You just got to play a couple Runeblade cards, stack those rune chants, and even if you're perhaps, I don't say you're patient necessarily, you just got to have the right recipe to do it. And I have a feeling that if Jeremy has, any useless cards in hand, he probably would have tossed them out by now. But still, you want to hold on to it until it's completely vital. Being at 10 at this case, it seems quite healthy. You're at double digits, but Brodie's got a Channel Mount, and we're going to see what that last card is.
Oh, it was a Ravenous Rabble. Actually, this is huge.
Oh,
no! It doesn't even necessarily matter because the Ravenous Rabble is going to present a ton of damage and have go again and be able to swing Rosetta Thorn after this for 2 and 2. So even though it's presenting 5, this can still present a decent lethal. It's the worst case scenario, of course, to hit that top, being a blue, but you're still presenting a ton of damage.
That blue off the top may be the dagger in Brodie's heart right now. A deck that, as we discussed, runs, what is that? It runs 50 reds, 20 blues, no yellows. I mean, your 40% of your deck is this is math that I can't do in Canada with the exchange rate, and I don't even dare do it. Ultimately, that blue was the improbable. However, it is the reality. So in this case, Brodie has to adjust, get his bearings. He's not tilted in any way because he still has an out here. But look at the way that he presented this. This was so good. The Quicken gives the Lightning Surge out of hand go again. The one out of Arsenal has go again. The Ravenous Rabble. Like we mentioned, how do we do this? How do you present lethal? You need three go agains off the back of that Channel Mount Heroic, and Brodie did it well-timed with that Tunic.
Now, from Jeremy's perspective, this is a 1 to a 2-card block. And it would have been a lot worse. It would have been a guaranteed 2-card block if that does come for like 8 or 7. There are very few yellows, or 0 yellows in the deck, I believe, right?
0.
And so this was either coming for that big 5 or that 7, I believe. And in this case, because it's a 5, you can maybe consider going pretty low and doing like a 1-card block. But here he's gripping 3 that he probably wants to keep, and 1 that maybe he's considering the block on. You technically don't have to block here if you want to survive, but not blocking at all right here means I think you go to 1, unless you... And I don't think there's any way to pitch into Arcane Barrier, right?
Hey, no Arcane Barrier. Not necessary.
That's just the way it goes, I guess.
You know what else is the way that it goes?
How?
You ever hear that old wives' tale? That old that classic saying Confucius says.
No.
No. Well, I mean, when it comes down to wisdom, what's something that you can impart perhaps to Brodie in this case?
Consider Arcane Barrier, or you may just become discombobulated. I mean, you, at this moment, always consider your blocks, but being able to block arcane damage is a big deal.
No, if there's anybody who's totally combobulated, it's Brodie. He is absolutely fully combobulated. You could see him completely focused. He's got a plan, wasn't rattled by the blue off the top of Ravenous Rabble, presenting so look at that, going down to one danger zone here, maintaining the full grip. Jeremy Stowe's got a plan.
Now he's going to have to block with a single card here, or he's dead to casual lethal. So there will be a 3-card hand for Jeremy, but Jeremy's trying to figure out how to present 4 Arcane at this point. That's really the goal, like we mentioned a moment ago. The goal here is to present 4 Arcane, and you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can generate Rune Chants off of your Grasp or single Rune Chant. You can generate a Rune Chant off of a non-attack into an attack. But you can also push 2 and 2 with Rosetta to push 2 arcane damage that way. So any combination there is what he's essentially looking for a guaranteed seal.
So he's holding on to a Shrill of Skull form. I'm trying to see, is that, what else is in
Looks
there?
like a Mavrian Skies in his hand as well, which is exactly what you'd be looking for, and a Belittle. And that Belittle, if it's a blue, has the capability of paying for that Shrill, which would gain Go Again off the Mav Skies, and then followed up with Rosetta, and that would present lethal. No, it's not a Mav Skies, so that's actually a Drawn to the Dark Dimension, which changes this completely. Because at this point, I don't know if you have the capability of actually making 4 arcane damage, which means you can give Brodie another turn inadvertently.
If Brodie gets another turn, it is basically... Okay, so Channel Mount Heroic sticks around.
It does. He did pitch the Earth card to stick the Channel Mount Heroic, and that is the big deal going into that turn. It's why we saw him take all of that damage on the previous turn, right? He dropped to 4 because he wanted to present exactly that much damage.
I mean, when it comes down to it, there's got to be a situation here where eventually, you've presented so much damage as Jeremy. You've pushed so much. You started the game with an 11-point lead. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, 3 turns later, there's significant shrinkage going on with your life total. It is all the way down to 1. What happened over the course of 3 turns that you could not keep the wheels on and just and convert? Brodie has been patient, he's been poised, he's been prepared, he's been other words that start with P. It's incredible.
And so here the play, and this may actually do it because I believe that's a Spellblade Assault, which does generate Rune Chants when you play it, would be to be able to pay for creepers and come in with the Minnowism and then follow that up with a Go Again, essentially, or a second action point Spellblade Assault and have that generate Rune Chants. So he may still have just enough to get there, but it's going to be pretty close.
A lot of time has elapsed, but not many turns, as both players have really been agonizing over every decision, and it matters, ladies and gentlemen. This is the U.S. National Championships. You do not want to let anything slip by. The best players in the world are the ones that play cleanly, that execute properly, proper sequencing and everything. And as you can see, Brodie just kind of laying the foundation on this turn. We're going to go ahead and block out here. And I think at this point, Brodie's saying, all right, how do I just send 1 arcane at this guy and make it stick? And I think at the end of the day, you just need 1 pit. You need a blue, and you might get there.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing is true from Jeremy's perspective, because really, if any of this physical damage goes through, it is so easy to create the necessary Rune Chants or arcane damage sources to push lethal. So presenting even just a very large attack may actually be able to seal the deal here. 1 resource comes in with the Spellblade Assault, makes a Rune Chant on the back end. This is going to be huge because it's got the red Minnowism buff, I believe, as well.
Yeah, Spellblade Assault. No, it's a blue coming through, so it's going to come in, or is it?
It's a red, but it doesn't get the Minnowism buff because it's not affected by Minnowism. And that's going to be the game anyway. I believe he throws in the block, and that just takes it, sealing the game and crushing for the win. which is really big. Now, of course, this pushes Jeremy. I believe Jeremy picks up the game and pushes him into that 5-0 mark, trying to seal the deal on a perhaps completely undefeated day one, which would be huge, and that's what everyone's really aiming for.
And when they were actually playing there, you can see that both players without their arcane barrier and just throwing haymakers back and forth. It was a situation where basically Brodie was presented with a lot of damage, and Brodie said, hey, I got cards too. Let's make a trade.
That's exactly right. They were like, you know what? I've got arcane damage. You've got physical damage. Let's trade. And you know what else you can trade?
Oh, tell me.
You can trade this cracked bauble. If you would like a rainbow foil cracked bauble, you can trade for this. Just know that it's from both of us with love.